Welcome to the 13th day of March 2024. As we head into this middle week, this Hump Day Wednesday, a very interesting scenario is unfolding weather-wise. We're going to see the interaction of some Canadian air and a Pacific storm system. This is not a cut and dry situation. There's been some very subtle little changes in the weather pattern. And the headline is this Pacific storm is going to bring different results. Results may vary, as you like to say. Sometimes you read on labels or during commercials. We are going to have different results based on where you are. There have been some subtle little changes in the movement of this low that looks like it's going to really focus its heaviest precipitation in areas that favor winds from a northeast or an upslope direction. This may be more of a mountain event and an area where the snow is heaviest right along the front range of the mountain ranges and lesser amounts on the plains. But the atmosphere is getting moist, as you can see this picture yesterday, as that Pacific moisture comes on in. So we'll get into and drive into the details here in a minute. But the overall message here is that we definitely have stormy weather coming, not for everybody though. It really is going to depend on your location, and where you are in relation to the mountain ranges is really going to impact whether or not you're going to get a lot of snow or just get a little bit wet. So we're going to see this come in, and as I just mentioned, that's where the heavier snow is going to be. And also, we're going to have some snow holes. So if you're going to have an upslope wind from the northeast, and the east side of the mountain ranges are going to pick up the heaviest snow. If you're on the other side of a range, you're a downslope situation, so you'll see lesser amounts. We're also going to see concentrated rain and snow in the Four Corners region. The Four Corners region is going to get a lot of moisture out of this, rain and snow, for parts of Arizona, New Mexico, southwest Colorado, far southern Utah, because you'll see here in a minute, the storm is just going to sit there for several days. The satellite imagery this morning still a little bit chaotic, but if you look really closely, there are some clues to what's going on. Here's a clue right here. You see these high clouds coming over the Sierras here? This is the jet stream wind digging, buckling, and causing curvature in the wind flow aloft. There's it's not really easy to detect, but we're starting to see a little bit of a counterclockwise circulation here over southern Idaho. So basically the low is starting to come together with the jet stream. You can just follow the clouds is buckling. Curvature is forming in the atmosphere. That's going to cause the low pressure to begin to form. And there's a good slug already of Pacific moisture coming up out ahead of this system. And this did produce overnight some rain and snow shower activity. But this is taking some moisture out of the equation by this afternoon as it pulls up into the plains. But we'll see a consolidation of the low pressure system here in the southwestern United States. Ahead of this system, this shows the large geography of where we're going to see winter weather conditions across the Intermountain West. So wherever you see pink and blue or a purple shade there, that is where you're going to have advisories and watches and warnings for snowfall. Some of it very heavy, especially in the pink areas. This area right here is for red flag warnings because there's going to be a lot of wind and high fire dangers again into this part of the United States out ahead of that low. But you can see there's a concentration really close to the divide, just along the divide and west of the divide where the better concentration of moisture will be. Notice we do not have many advisories out into the plains, and that's because of a few subtle changes. So for Wyoming, there's been a little bit of a change. This does look like this storm is going to get a little bit more north. So you can see that Lander, Riverton, Casper, Douglas, the east slopes of the Bighorn Mountains, the high Bighorns, and the Sheridan area up in the south central Montana, you're now under winter weather advisories as that little subtle change has made a little bit more of a northward shift. You can see the I-80 corridor from Evanston to Rollins to Laramie into the Cheyenne areas. We've been talking that's going to be a travel hazard, especially late today, tonight, tomorrow, and into early Friday. Then into Colorado, you can see that the front range and the mountain areas are certainly under the gun for winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. These pink areas from the southern mountains of Wyoming, and then just right along on either side of this black line, this is where the upslope is really going to want to focus, and where the snow in the foothills west of I-25 could be very, very heavy. But I also notice Denver, then out along the Palmer Divide is another area where the snow could be quite heavy. And as we take a look at the low beginning to form, this is where we are at noon today. There's that high pressure ridge. You can see that on the satellite imagery. And then by tomorrow, by noon tomorrow, noon today, noon tomorrow, there's that south-southwestward push of the low. Now what's happening is this is going to draw the more concentrated, deeper moisture right here. And since it's shifting a little bit more, just a little bit more to the southwest, this means lesser amounts of moisture out into the plains of Nebraska. Out here, there's still going to be moisture, but it doesn't look like it's going to be as much as it looked like earlier in the week because this low is just pulling away to the southwest a bit more. So storms don't always go west to east, as you can see here, as that high pressure ridge along the coast is causing that storm to dig south-southwest. And then look at this. So this is by noon tomorrow. This is by noon Friday. See, it's still wanting to go all the way down into far southern areas of California, concentrating the moisture closer to the mountains, closer to the Four Corners area, as the cold surge from Canada gets directed more that way. And then by Sunday morning, it's still there. The low is still there. It's weakening, but it's still over Arizona. And winds aloft are going to be coming in from the north, so along and east of the divide, colder air will be spilling on in. Now, what I want to show you here is, it's a little bit hard to look at this map, so I'll let it run here for a little bit, but I want to show you the upslope conditions that are going to be developing up to 10,000 feet. Now, if you look out, you'll see these little arrows. See the little point, little arrow there? That shows where the wind direction is coming from. And what I'm showing you is the development at 10,000 feet of winds from the northeast developing here as we go through the next 24 to 36 hours. And if you notice the brighter colors is where the winds get stronger. This is right now by noon today. By afternoon, then look how there's a concentration. Okay, the Front Range of Colorado, there's a concentration of those brighter colors going right up against the mountains and foothills. And if you look very closely at those thin black lines and those little arrows, you'll see that the direction is northeast, from the northeast into these areas here. So that's where the concentration of the upslope, where the air is going to be converging up against those foothills and mountains. When you push that air uphill, it cools, the moisture in there condenses, and then you get the clouds, and then you get the precipitation. So the low being back here in the desert southwest is causing counterclockwise circulation and deep upslope from the northeast into especially the Colorado Front Range areas and far southern areas of Wyoming. Now, there could be the potential that the models are a bit too far southwest with the low. And if it ends up not going so far to the southwest, then we may end up with more moisture on the plains. But I want to show you the difference in the modeling. If the low does go back more to the southwest, you can see that the concentration, the brighter colors, are more Front Range of Colorado here into the Four Corners area along the I-80 corridor, and there's just less out here. There's just not as much as we were thinking earlier in the week out on the plains. However, if the low doesn't go that far to the southwest, here's a high resolution model that actually has some pretty heavy moisture further out into the plains. But you can see there's a big difference here, especially right here. So this is where results are going to vary. Big difference in northeastern Colorado, southeastern Wyoming, and parts of southwest Nebraska, depending really on how far to that southwest the low tracks. So let's just kind of take a look at where the snowfall is going to be, and you can see the concentration of the deeper precipitation in those upslope areas. If we focus in on Wyoming, you can see that the I-80 corridor is going to get snowed on. The snow is now going to get further north into central Wyoming. We'll get some snow in the Bighorns. But notice along and east of I-25, there's not nearly as much snow now because of that low going more to the southwest. Look at the Front Range of Colorado. So let's go south. Here we go into Colorado. Look at the potential deep, heavy snow in the foothills and Front Range mountains of Colorado. So as you get up into Conifer, you get up into Evergreen, you get up into the higher elevations west of Fort Collins and Loveland and Longmont there, then also along the Palmer Divide, you could have some very, very heavy wet spring snows. And this goes all the way down west of Colorado Springs, down into the northern mountains of New Mexico. Very heavy snows in the southwest mountains of Colorado. So this will add a lot to the snowpack, especially the South Platte and North Platte basins, but also into the drainages of southern Colorado as well. Let's go further south. As you get into the rim country of Arizona, the mountains of west central New Mexico, big snows falling up in the higher elevations and rain down low. So there's going to be a lot of weather, especially in those upslope areas. We'll update you tomorrow, but be ready, especially if traveling I-80, Interstate 70, sections of I-25, especially later today, overnight tonight, and into the day tomorrow.